we are back. This is the Shillan and Duffy Show on the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network and the SureDog Radio Network. This is the recap show of UFC Ortega versus Zombie. I am your host. My name is Keith Shillan. I'm a writer for SureDog. Joining me, as always, is the senior editor of SureDog.com, the great Ben Duffy. Ben, how you doing, man?
I'm doing really well. We are recording just barely a half hour or 40 minutes after the card wrapped. I'm still a little charged up. It sounds like you are too.
Yeah. So we can pull back the curtain for a second. So we can't always record right after. It's usually because of me. I have some things in my personal life that I have to attend to. But hopefully we'll be able to do it right after the event more and more. Because I get super excited. Sometimes when we record the next day, we're already starting to focus on the next event. But man, this is a good event to do right afterwards. I thought the entire card was sensational. And when I say sensational, we got to start right from the top. In the main event, we had Brian Ortega versus the Korean Zombie, Chan Sung Jung. So before let's just get right to it. Brian Ortega won. He won by unanimous decision. This week, I was talking to Nolan King of MMA Junkie while we were at Bellator, and we were talking about this main event, and I was saying to him that I think the striker versus grappler storyline is just a lazy storyline I was saying, like, Brian Ortega's a much better striker than he gets credit for. Like, people forget that he was the guy who knocked out Frankie Edgar while he got smashed by Max Holloway. He had moments. And then I was saying how the Korean Zombie, Chan Sung Jung, when he first entered the UFC, he was known for his grappling. He wasn't known for his devastating striking. What did you think of the matchup before, when it got announced and just the lead up the last couple of days?
I loved the matchup as soon as it was announced. Obviously, they had that little bit of personal friction that always adds a little bit of spice to the mix. But just stylistically and competitively, I thought it was fantastic. I agree with you that the whole striker versus grappler thing was a little overstated going in. Ortega's always been very capable of taking care of himself. Holloway outstruck him, but Holloway outstrikes just about everybody. And as you pointed out, this is the man who uppercutted Frankie Edgar out of his sneakers.
Yeah, I also thought he starts off slow or he needs to come from behind. I kind of felt like that was a narrative like many years ago. He was going against Moicano and all this. But I feel like that really changed over the last couple of years. But that kept getting brought up too, like, he's going to get behind. The only way he can win is if he catches a submission and, during a scramble or, come from behind kind of thing. I'm like, have they not seen Brian Ortega's last 3 or 4 fights? Like, that wasn't the case. Like, he was putting guys out early, like Frankie Edgar, like Cub Swanson. Like, he didn't have to come from behind on those guys. What do you think of that narrative?
I have never thought that Brian Ortega was a slow starter. Brian Ortega was a slow fighter in the sense that he has always had, even when he was very new, even, right when he arrived at the UFC or right before, like back when he was in RFA, like pre-LFA, RFA, he's always been an incredibly relaxed, tranquil, just almost languid fighter. I mean, you can tell that the dude's a surfer,
Sure.
And it led to him losing rounds, but it wasn't that he was the kind of guy that needed to get slapped around the head a few times. He was just always a guy that was waiting for his moment.
Yeah.
Which is why, I mean, up through at least the Swanson fight, I think he had never won a round in the UFC.
Yeah.
But no, it's never been that he's a slow starter. It's just he does not normally have a round winning style.
Yeah.
Now,
that's a good point.
I imagine we're going to get to this, but he definitely had a round winning style tonight, considering he won all 5 rounds. And while I didn't give him a 10-8 in any of the rounds, they were all definitive. None of these rounds were very close. But he has added so many new tools to his toolbox. It used to be that he was this relaxed, waiting fighter, but he just had so many more things that he was doing and trying out different new things almost each round. I mean, he was in a fight. I don't think he was taking Jung lightly at all, even to the end, but it felt almost as though he was toying with him because he was just pulling new tricks out of his hat. I mean, I feel like I'm Keith Shillan tonight because I'm like, overstating and too excited about what's going on, but I will already say hands down that is easily the greatest performance of Brian Ortega's career, which is saying a lot considering this guy has been a top 5 fighter for the last several years. But this might be the most marked improvement I have ever seen in a fighter off of an extended absence from the sport. He's been gone for almost 2 years, and I was arguing on my own show on Monday that I didn't think rust was going to be a problem because he's always been a fight 1 or 2 times a year guy anyway. So I expected him to be as good as ever. I did not expect him to be better than ever, and he was better than ever tonight.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's so much to unwrap because you said a lot of things like points.
Sorry.
No. I didn't mean like you were talking a lot. I just mean you said a lot of things that just kind of like sent off triggers in my head that I kind of want to go down. And I don't even know which way to go because I'm so excited about so many things you said. Now, you mentioned about how long he's been off, and you're saying, he hasn't fought a lot. He hasn't fought in almost 2 years. Mm-hmm. We go back to the last time he won a fight. It's been almost 3 years since he actually won a fight. Obviously not counting, just winning a half hour, 45 minutes ago. So that really, like something you said that I was just like, man, you said that it's might have been the best performance of a guy who's been out for a long time. Now, there's other ones. You think about Dominic Cruz, the long layoff, beating TJ Dillashaw for the title, obviously incredible. But that was a back and forth war. I was in attendance. I actually scored it for TJ Dillashaw. Obviously George St. Pierre, Michael Bisping winning the title and that. But a pillar to post performance like this was absolutely sensational. Now, you said, he hasn't won a round. You said it yourself, he won all 5 rounds tonight decisively. He had big moments, I felt like, in every single round. Like, not only just won the round, but like had like moments where he almost stopped the fight. I didn't think, Korean Zombie's face was a mess. I actually thought when they were checking the cut that fight was over. I was saying, my wife was sitting next to me. We were watching it on TV, and I was like, this fight's over. Like, you can't keep wiping your eye like that. And if you're showing that it's going in your eye, it's bothering you. And I'm so glad that it wasn't stopped then. Not that I think there would have been any controversy, wouldn't have been one of these Nate Diaz things, but just so you don't have that 1 or 2 idiots who be like, well, there was a whole round left, or how many minutes are left? The Zombie with his big power. The other thing that really jumped out to me, and I want to get into some of the technical things in a minute, because there's so much good technical stuff that was going on. But you said something, like, no one expected this. If someone said that it was a one-sided striking affair, you would have said, wow, look how the Korean Zombie, he looked like he's been peaking, the knockouts he's had recently, and, Brian Ortega's been off, the beating that he took from Max Holloway, like, how much did that really, when you see someone get beat up as bad as he did against Max Holloway, like that, we've seen guys never be able to recover from that. We've seen guys, your brain can only take so many punches. Like, does he fall off a cliff with that? No, anybody who's picking Brian Ortega, we either were picking a back and forth war or he finds a submission somehow. Nobody was picking him to just pick apart the Korean Zombie for 25 minutes. Just I'm going to jump in. I got to just talk about this for a second. Just talk whatever you want to talk. Cause I'm going to talk. I'm literally going to break down the rounds because I was taking notes and I love it. So just talk.
I'm going to point out just one new strategic wrinkle that he pulled out, where he grabbed Jung's lead leg with his lead hand on at least 2 different occasions. I mean, he'd been messing with that leg anyway, like throwing little punches at it, like faking the knee tap. But there were twice in the last 3 rounds that he reached out, grabbed that leg, and just pulled.
Yeah, it's a snatch single.
Now, except he didn't really snatch a single. He just pulled the leg, let go, and stood back up. Now, I know that you have fought and you have trained. If you're striking with somebody, like, dude, if you and I are sparring and I grab your lead leg and pull on it, even if my head is right there, you cannot punch me. Everything in your body is like, got to regain my balance. So the problem is that shows just how fast and how fluid Ortega was. Because the thing is, that only works if I get to your leg and pull on it first. Otherwise, you can knock my block off with literally either hand. The fact that he did that just threw Jung off so badly. It stopped so much of what Jung wanted to do. And like, Ortega made it look easy. And I mean, he's a taller guy, longer guy, but there's a fluidity to that because he did it, put his head completely in the danger zone every time. I mean, it reminds me of like early Yoel Romero fights where he would just like do an ankle pick on somebody without bending over, just reach over, grab their ankle and like flip them ass over tea kettle. And you're like, well, man, why don't more fighters do that? Because most fighters can't do that.
No, that's right.
Like, if I tried that on another human being, they would do whatever they wanted to me.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that. And he went back to it a couple times just to show that, yeah, I did that on purpose. Yeah, I've been training this.
Yeah. I loved how he was mixing in the takedowns and then mixing in like the fake takedown, overhand right, fake takedown, right hand. I think one time he did a fake takedown that threw a left high kick. It was sensational.
And I mean, he never really sold out for the takedown at all. This fight took place essentially entirely on the feet, but he kept the threat of it there. Yeah. And it stopped so much. It stopped so much of what Jung wanted and needed to do.
So, was there a single round that really, like, I know he was so good in all 5 rounds, but was there one moment in either? I mean, you're talking about snatching the single, or just pulling his leg. Is that the thing that really jumped out at you all 25 minutes, or was there a certain moment in a round, something that really was like most impressive to you?
In hindsight, everybody will probably point at that spinning back elbow. Ortega threw it blind, knowing that Jung was going to be there. Again, Ortega has always been one of the most gifted athletes in MMA. Like, you could tell it just from the time he was a completely raw, Gracie grappler who just decided to start fighting. You could tell. But by the way he threw that, you could tell, I've done my tape study. I know where Jung goes, and I'm going to put my elbow where his head's going to be. That was beautiful. Yeah. That's what's going to stand out as a highlight to people. But I mean, I knew the fight was over when Jung got cut. And even though it looks like the cut probably came, from their heads clashing, like, that's where I could tell, okay, he's completely on the offensive here. Jung is in completely reactive mode, and he's just not going to be able to do anything for the rest of the fight. I'm glad they didn't stop it, just because I thought Ortega might actually have a chance to get a clean stoppage. He didn't, but there was no controversy. Even if the fight was stopped there on the cut, Ortega had won everything up to that point.
Yeah, God, there's so much stuff to unwrap that I just love that you just said. So, I obviously the elbow, that's the thing that we're going to see in his highlight reels. Like when when he's fighting whoever's next, it's going to be that they'll show him landing his guillotine and landing this and that, but that spinning back elbow is going to be on his highlight reel forever. That elbow to me is what, like, when that landed, the Zombie was done. Like, his chance of winning was done. Like, he never recovered from it for the next 15 minutes. Because it was near the end of the second round. I want to go through each round because I was taking notes on the round. And it was just because when I originally was taking the notes, I expected to be like, how did you score the first round? How did you score the second one? This happened, that happened. What a war, And then it completely changed. So in the first round, what impressed me so much by Ortega was he went to the southpaw stance and he was parrying the lead hand. Now, if people don't know what I mean by parrying, it's you're kind of pushing down on the front hand, and then you can use it. You almost like springboard your hand off of theirs to land a jab. And he was shutting down, like the Zombie was having such a hard time getting by that he was shutting down, and he was coming around with a hook, and he was just shutting it down. But what was most impressive to me is every one of his attacks, there was no rhythm. Like, a lot of guys get into a rhythm. Like, he kept changing up. It was like, that's stuff that Demetrius Johnson in his prime does. Like, that's when I always think about Demetrius Johnson, I always think the master of rhythm. And what I mean by rhythm is you don't want to have a rhythm. You want to have surprises. It's not supposed to be like a song where you're like, okay, here comes the bridge. Like, no. Like, he always surprised me. And that's what I was like, wow. Like, and the variety of his attacks. I know I saw a lot of people say on Twitter, he'd jab, hook, high kick, fake the shot, like everything in the first round. So then the second round, it seemed like the Zombie was starting to get back into it. Like, the second round was definitely his, which is ironic because the one he almost got knocked out was his best round, though he didn't have, but he started stalking him a little bit. He started cutting off his escape routes. Like, he started being like I expected. And then that elbow landed. Ortega definitely had moments too. It was a 50-50 round at that point. And then that elbow landed, which was sensational. I agree. I don't think it was luck. Like, I think it was planned. Like, then the third round, because he hurt the Zombie was trying to get it back on him. And this is when he started like pulling him, like standing his ground, dipping, and everything was coming around the sides, and he was catching him with things. And then when he wasn't coming around the sides, he'd come down to the body, and that's when we saw a lot of body punches from him. That's when he started adding the fake takedowns because Zombie, because the first 2 rounds he really wasn't going for the takedowns. The Zombie started pressing at him, trying to get that, trying to get his big clean punch back, and that's when he started faking the takedowns. The overhand, right? And he just started, at that point, the Zombie just was froze. He was just he was so confused what was happening. He was there in the fight, but his brain wasn't there. He was trying to play catch up, and he just couldn't, because before he could catch up, Ortega was going to 2, 3, 4, 5, and the Zombie still in 1. Going on to round 4. Now round 4, he's just slipping and pulling him into power shots. And this is the round where I thought Ortega was trying to put him out. And this is when he started doing a lot of damage, blooding up. He was just pulling him into his power, and he was kind of sitting on his punches and really laying off. And then the 5th round, which might be my favorite one, is he's ahead. He's using so much movement. He starts being light on the feet, and to be that light, like James Krause. I know he had a knee injury, but James Krause is someone who's always been kind of light on the feet. And then it's hard to sustain that. To be able to stay such light, so much movement in the 5th round, and then just jabbing him every single time the Zombie would come in, he would just run into a jab. And I was just like, oh my God, he did something different. Every single round, that was absolutely sensational to me. We got to move on because we're spending way too much time, and I know we can go this. But what impressed me most is the mindset to he took such a beating from Max Holloway. He had all these injuries, and the confidence was still there. He looked better than ever. That's what jumps out to me. I know we don't. I mean, do we do a comeback fighter of the year?
Yeah, we do.
Oh, I mean, how can it not be Brian Ortega?
I mean, I'll have to look. Maybe there's someone else I'm not thinking of that. Because the thing is, he's going to come back. And almost certainly he's only going to fight once this year.
That's true.
They're not going to get anything in, especially if they're going to have him fight Volkanovski next, which is the noises they were making. But he's definitely in the discussion because he came back from the only loss of his career and a decisive one to the best performance of his career. Just, not much you can say about that.
So, all right, let's do this. I don't know there's so much stuff I want to talk about, but we're already 20 minutes in, and we got the rest of the card to talk about. So we do have to move on. But you just mentioned it. Alex Volkanovski, the commentary team, was talking about the one story that really jumps out to me about the featherweight division right now. It's prior to this fight, there wasn't the guy. There wasn't the guy that this is definitely the number one contender. You can, you think about the bantamweight division. It was so stacked. There was so many guys. But Aljamain Sterling was still pretty much the consensus. This is the guy. Featherweight, right. There was one. You had your Korean Zombie camp. You have your, Zabit Magomedsharipov camp. You got people, the Yair Rodriguez camp, which I was kind of in. I was like, how can Zombie beat when Yair knocked him out? I actually think Yair was a bigger threat than Yair, but just on the merit of he actually has a win. You have some people then you have the next tier down, guys who kind of been on a roll, Calvin Kattar and Josh Emmett, and then some people thought Max Holloway would beat Volkanovski, and then nobody was talking about Brian Ortega.
Nope.
If you told me that I would be saying, this guy needs to get the next title shot, I would have been Korean Zombie wins. All right, he did something so amazing that he jumps Yair Rodriguez. No way possible. And obviously, I'm telling you who I'm going with. I think the next guy for Brian Ortega, it has to be Alex Volkanovski. He's got to get a title shot after this performance because of everything the featherweight division has happened, since Volkanovski's been the champion. Nobody had a performance like this where, is there an argument? Who's been more impressive than what Brian Ortega did?
Yeah, nobody's put on a more impressive performance considering who the opponent is. Because the thing is, Rodriguez knocked out Jung with a knockout for the ages. It was, seriously, we just were talking about the greatest knockouts of all time last week. It's in my top 5 still, but
yeah, and a lot of people think it's number 1. Sorry to interrupt you.
He was seconds away from losing that fight.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you. A lot of people put it number 1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people put it number 1. I'm not mad at that, but Jung was seconds away from winning that fight, and whether you think it was a brilliant last-second Hail Mary by Rodriguez, or you think it was just a cosmic accident,
Sure.
it's not something that he's going to be able to go back to the drawing board and say, this is how I'm going to beat Volkanovski. I'm going to let him kick my ass for 5 rounds.
That's right. That's a great point. Yeah, that's a great point.
It can't be replicated.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, give me Ortega. The only thing that would give me pause is if Ortega says, I need 6 months.
Yeah.
Because Ortega's a guy who's always said, I want to fight about twice a year, just because he has other things that he likes to do. He's admitted he has a huge weight cut to 145, and he doesn't like to undertake the kind of camp it takes for him to do that more than once every 6 months. So if he says, I don't want to fight again until April, then maybe Volkanovski takes something else in between. Who knows?
Yeah. And let's not forget, you just talked about like large weight cuts. He's a very big featherweight. We have Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's coming up. So this is like the hardest time to make weight.
And it's not surfing weather. So yeah.
Yeah. The fact that we're both in agreement that he should be Ortega next after he is one fight removed from I don't even know what the scorecards was, but like a 50-43, a record-setting beatdown, just talks about what he actually did. So we both went with the title shot. Let's go with the Zombie. I think about that group of fighters that they all kind of had an argument. He's got 2 losses now to the guys who had an argument. So he's got it. He's got a long way back to a title shot. I'll let you go first. Who would you match him with next?
He needs a step back, but it's entirely possible that when all this shakes out, we're going to find out that he's still a top 5 featherweight and he's just been fighting guys above him. I like Calvin Kattar. Kattar has done enough, I think, to earn a big name. There's, regardless of who the best fighter is, there's no bigger name in the featherweight division, assuming McGregor's never a featherweight again, than the Korean Zombie. If Zombie is still a top 5 fighter, he beats Kattar. If he's not, hey, Kattar got his chance and he steps up.
You know, my Boston guys are going to be pissed off at you talking about my hometown guy. That guy's wicked good.
He is wicked good. If I didn't think he was, I wouldn't be recommending him. Because otherwise, Moicano would be a great one, but Moicano's already moving up to 55. So
I wrote down 2 names, and Calvin Kattar was like my plan B.
Okay.
And the reason I had a plan B is the guy I would really like to see kind of throw haymakers with Zombie is Josh Emmett. The reason why I had plan B is I know Josh Emmett may be injured. So,
okay.
But I think we've talked about this so many times, and we always talk about it like bantamweight, featherweight, lightweight, and welterweight. Like when you get to the top, you can't make a bad matchup. So sign me up for Calvin Kattar, sign me up for Josh Emmett, sign me up for Jeremy Stevens, Arnold Allen. Like I'm good for any of them.
I mean, Stevens has lost 4 of 5, so I think he's too much of a step back. But other than that, I was not being scientific. I was simply scrolling down the Sherdog top 10 and saying, who hasn't he fought yet?
Yeah,
that doesn't have a fight.
Because you can't make a bad matchup.
Nope.
So let's move on because we spent a lot of time on the main event. It just I was so. It's just one of these great performances. And guys, add us about who should be the comeback fighter of the year. Cause I know I live in the moment and I don't even like it could have been last month might be an obvious pick and I don't even think about it. Cause I live right now, Brian. Oh, let me ask you one more question before we move on. If they book, if Dana White does something he never does, he gets super excited. He announced right now, that's this, Volkanovski called me. He's all fired up. We've signed contract right now. Pick your betting website, Bovada, 5 Dimes, whatever the betting website is. Whoever sponsors Sherdog, I don't know. Who's the favorite? Who's the betting favorite tomorrow morning?
I think your betting favorite is probably Volkanovski, but I bet the money moves in Ortega's direction, as it gets closer to fight night.
Yeah, I don't know if he broke right, but it would be a very close pick'em fight. But let's move on. Speaking of champions, former champion Jessica Andrade made her debut in the flyweight division, and she took on former title challenger Caitlin Jakagian, and what a performance. She picked up a first-round TKO. Is there even a debate that Jessica Andrade is not the pound-for-pound strongest fighter in the women's division? Pure strength.
She has now fought in 3 different weight classes. She has been the shortest person in all of them. She was the shortest strawweight top 10 fighter. and she has been the stronger fighter physically every single time I've seen her at 135, 150, and then now 125. She is like a little. Well, we're about to have Halloween. You know those little fun-size candies? Yeah. She's like the fun-size Incredible Hulk. It is ridiculous.
Right. That's right. So Jessica Andrade, she has won the UFC title by knockout, by a highlight reel slam that, like we talked about, Ortega will always be on it. She's had walk-off knockout, one punch, which doesn't happen in women's division. Like, she's had all these things. And am I living in the moment by saying this was her best performance of her career?
For Andrade?
Yeah.
Slamming Rose on her head to win the title's got to be it.
But I always think about, like, she lost the first round. She got, like, you know what I'm saying?
Well, no, she lost the whole fight until she slammed Rose on her head. But if you ask her what's her favorite fight of hers, she's going to say that.
Yeah. No, of course. I'm not saying most memorable. I'm just saying what's her best performance.
Either this or her one-shotting Claudia Gadelha.
Yeah.
Because that was the first time she really flashed that kind of power, like, in her strikes. She'd always been kind of the one who wants to bully you against the fence, take you down, and beat you up. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, I'm just trying to be contrarian here. This was... Sure. I mean, if we're being honest, you're right. This is the best performance ever.
But I always have to, like, ask you, because as we say, I'm the guy. Which is funny because I have I'm a fan of MMA since UFC 6. Like, I have a knowledge of it, but I love to live in the moment. I love hyperbole. Like, I like that. The thing that really impressed me is I don't know if you remember, but she was on a leg, and she did it a couple times. But the one that was really impressive, I think it was her second or third takedown. I don't remember how it takedown, but it wasn't her first one. She grabbed a leg. She was on a single, and Caitlin Chikagian was pushing her head down, and she was stuffing her head. She was pushing it down, which is, the old saying, where the head goes, the body follows. For her to change up with her head pushed down to lift up into a high crotch, lift Chikagian up in the air, I'm just like, how freakishly strong is this woman? And she's moving up a weight class, going against Caitlin Chikagian, who has, not recently, but used to be a bantamweight, not Jessica Andrade, a small bantamweight, like a truly decent-sized bantamweight who's, considered big flyweight, and just to lift her up like I pick up, like, my son and just slam, my 5-year-old son. It was incredible to me.
There is something I observed tonight, and full transparency, I picked Chikagian in this one. I knew Andrade would be the stronger fighter, but I looked at her, that Andrade is kind of her routes to victory, or what I thought her routes to victory were, until she punched Chikagian's guts out of her ear holes. And I said, I think Chikagian can take this one. I think it's going to be a lousy fight. I think she's going to win a 29-28 decision and just be good enough at keeping her on the end of her jabs and kicks and kind of use underhooks to get off the fence. I was dead wrong, but I observed something tonight that I don't observe very often, where Chikagian pretty much did all the right things, did all the textbook things that your coach would tell you to do to get out of situations, and it just didn't work. Yep. And the last time I could think of this happening are usually early Jacare fights where Jacare's opponent is doing what they're supposed to do, and they get arm triangled anyway, just because they're not strong enough and they're not good enough to stop him from doing what he wants to do.
Like, you could be on your back, you can do the telephone thing all you want. Jacare's still going to submit you.
She's still going to squeeze you till your head pops off.
You're going to pass out while talking on the phone.
And that's what that takedown in particular reminded me of. And also, the first time Andrade pushed her into the fence, she worked for double underhooks perfectly. And I'm like, okay, this should be the point where you can just kind of, shuck him off and turn to the side and get out from off the fence. And she couldn't get out. Andrade is just a bull. And I think that, to a certain extent, set up the body shots that finished it.
Yeah. So you said Caitlin Chikagian, she was trying to keep her distance. She was doing her, throwing at air, but being busy, so it makes it seem like you're landing shots. She was throwing teep kicks to try to keep her at bay. She even initiated, when Andrade got into her distance, she was one. I always say this all the time, you need, if you don't want to be in the clinch, when they get in it, you have to be the one to initiate, so they have to go on the defense. She did that. She landed some knees up there. But there was one point when she was clinched on it, and Jessica Andrade just backed her up in the cage, and Caitlin Chikagian was doing everything not to get pushed back to the cage. She just couldn't, which is so incredible to me. We got to talk about the body punch. I don't know if you've ever been punched in the stomach where you think you're going to die, but you think you're dying. Like when Katlyn Chookagian got punched and turned around.
Oh, with the look on her face.
Like she turned around and then she spun back. I don't think she was spinning back to look at like Jessica Andrade to like be ready for attack. I think she was looking to look at the referee, be like, "I'm dying, call an ambulance." Like, because I've been hit in the body in sparring once, and you think something just like exploded in your stomach, and everyone's cheering for your opponent to hit you, and you're like, "No, we're about to have the first death in the UFC." Like it's that scary. It is terrible.
Yeah, it was. I mean, kind of interesting that it was like actually a right, hand to the liver. That's kind of interesting because usually it's attacks from the left side that really tag you right there. But,
sure.
That was just kind of a result of the positioning of their bodies, and then she chased her down across the cage and nailed her in the guts again. Just really, really put an end to the things.
So I was at Bellator this week. And obviously, Chris Cyborg, the thing that really jumped out at me was her body shots. When you're in an arena and you can hear it, like when there's no fans. Like everyone who's a media member, try to get to one of these shows. Try to cover one show that has no crowd because it's different, especially at a high level where you got these. And I'm listening to Chris Cyborg go to Arlene Blankhouse, and I turned to Nolan King afterwards, and I know I keep dropping his name because it was us two and some young, really nice kid who, shout out to this kid. I don't remember his name. I apologize. But he was a writer for UConn. He's a student writer for UConn paper. And he was trying to Bellator was helping him out, so it was nice. Really nice to see a young kid there. But, I turned to Nolan and I said, these are the moments where I'm like, why do I like this sport? Like watching just Arlene Blank, like, am I a bad person to sit there? And I felt the same way that I felt like, oh God, that's a woman getting their body like blasted with Cyborg's throwing a 5-punch combination of the body and then finishes it with a kick. Like, and then I watched Katlyn Chookagian like look like she's dying and get hurt. Oh, and I'm just like, am I a bad person to like this sport? It's just one of those brutal moments. Jessica Andrade back in the division. That division has suddenly there's like this new surge of oh my God, I can't think of the division, 115-pound strawweights that are going up to flyweight. Like you have Cynthia Calvillo, you have Jessica Andrade, like they're getting exciting. Do you look at her? I mean, is she a title challenger?
Yeah.
Okay.
Val has her next dance partner set already. She's fighting Jennifer Maia next month. I think Andrade should jump the line. She's a former champion, and if a former champion moves to a new division, as far as I'm concerned, all they really need to do is prove they can make the weight, which is not a problem since she's moving up, and prove that they can still fight. She beat arguably the top contender, or certainly a top contender. If Chookagian hadn't fought Shevchenko already, she certainly would have gotten the title shot off this fight. Yeah. So why shouldn't Andrade get one? Yeah.
So, I mean, Joanna Jędrzejczyk got the title shot. I mean, she was a longer champion and all that, but
sure.
We talk about Jennifer Maia. I'm assuming you would take Shevchenko over both these girls, as I would.
Yes.
I feel very comfortable taking Shevchenko over Maia, over Andrade. But my question is, if Jennifer Maia pulled out right now with injury and they threw in Jessica Andrade, like the line would get closer. Like Jessica Andrade to me is a much bigger threat than Jennifer Maia.
Andrade brings unique weapons and threats to the table. That's the easiest way I can say it.
Yeah.
She brings something to the table that Shevchenko has never had to face at any weight class. And Shevchenko, spent a good chunk of her career as a slightly undersized 135er, the line would get closer. She would still be probably, minus 400. Minus 400 was what I was going to say. Minus 500, not minus 1100 or 1200, which she will be against Maia.
Yeah.
But she would rightly be a major favorite. But you can picture ways that Andrade could win that fight.
Mm-hmm. I mean, she lands a body punch like this, she could. She lands the one, overhand right and catches her clean, she could. If she picks her up and slams her on the back of her head, she could. Like, there is... Now, do I think that's likely to happen? No, it's very... I know we're kind of... If this future matchup, we're kind of already letting the cat out of the bag, what the hell you call it. Like, we already given our prediction for the round table, but when you think about Jennifer Maia, there's nothing that she is better at Valentina Shevchenko. Like, you can find like pure strength. Jessica Andrade has that over Valentina Shevchenko. Like, she might be the only person who has one area better than Valentina Shevchenko. Let's do this real quick because even though Chikagian has lost, that division is shallow. Like 2 wins and she's back in the title picture. The champions book. So let's go with Andrade. I was going down the list of people, like you were saying, going down the Sherdog ranking and seeing who's matched up. Everybody's matched up. Like, it seemed like all the top girls are matched up already. So just to keep her active and kind of get in what I think would be another very dominant one-sided performance, and would look even better if you want to move up the title shot, I would book her against Lauren Murphy, who just, she doesn't have an opponent. She just lost out on an opponent. That's the matchup I would do with Jessica Andrade. What would you do?
Oh, that's right. Murphy and Calvillo just fell apart, didn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, that works for me. That's beautiful.
All right, let's go to Chikagian. I want her to fall way back. I want her to kind of get some wins. I'm going to put against Sabina Mazo. What would you do?
That's fine with me. It's a shame that she and Maya have already fought, because otherwise I would have been good with booking her with Maya after Shevchenko finishes with her, because that would take 2 recent title challengers, give them a good fight without ruining a potential challenger who had not fought Shevchenko yet. But they've already fought, and fairly recently. Honestly, I like that just fine. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the issue you have with Chikagian is she's kind of fought Maya, she's fought Calderwood, she's fought Jessica Ai, like she's fought all the other people that you would already match her up with. So you kind of start going down and try to fight something new. You get kind of shallow.
Yeah.
Pretty soon.
Roxanne Modafferi and Viviane Araújo just got booked against each other. Otherwise, either of them would have been good too.
Yeah.
But
that's the other situation we were having.
Mazo.
Before that, Jim Crute beat Modestas Bukauskas. He won by first round knockout. What a sensational performance. He was a big favorite, and I know we've talked about this. This is what big favorites should do. The kid absolutely destroyed him, walked right through him. This is a kid who came in the UFC, wasn't really known for his striking. He was more known for his, I don't want to say, I mean, I guess wrestling, but his ground game. But a lot of overhand right, slip right hand, like really he couldn't miss it tonight. Finally, the guy's built like a brick shit house. You could just tell this is a guy who's got to hit hard. Lands him knocking out. This guy's only 24 years old, so he's only coming into the power. This was one of those, to me, like, yes, like we have another guy. Like, I'm going to start getting excited about him. Like that. Yeah.
We do. And it's to the point that I almost feel bad that they threw Bukauskas at this guy. Because Modestas Bukauskas, he's only 26 himself. He's got plenty of potential. The funny thing is, when they walked into the cage against each other, because I didn't watch the weigh-ins, but when they walked into the cage against each other, I was like, oh man, is Bukauskas another one of these European guys that once he gets his second fight in USADA, he shrinks? But no, it's not that. It's the Crute, like you said, he is just built like a fucking, he is a tank.
Yeah, and he's 24, which is scary.
He's 24. Yeah, I think Bukauskas. I think he still has a decent ceiling at light heavyweight. I still think this guy, will take a step back and probably string together a couple wins. I don't know if he's a future top 10 guy.
Yeah.
But as empty as the cupboard is at 205, it wouldn't take much for this guy to get back into the picture. Just questionable matchup. Crute needed a better guy than this.
Yeah, he called out Nikita Krylov, which I think actually was a call out that makes sense. So give him credit for that. He's 4-1 now in the UFC. His only loss was with Misha Serkinov, where he got proven necktied. But if you remember, didn't he I'm trying to remember because I vaguely remember that. But I remember the finish. Didn't he hurt Serkinov? Didn't he almost finish Serkinov?
It was a wild fight.
Yeah.
He was winning until. I mean, a Peruvian necktie never gets slapped on in a normal conventional situation.
Yeah,
Something weird was happening.
Yeah, I think he hurt him, and and Misha Serkinov, he's a seasoned vet. He's one of the guys who's top 15-ish fighter. So there's not a bad loss, especially when you're at that time he was 23 years old.
Okay, yeah, Serkinov was ahead early. Krut got on top and was pounding him.
Okay, and then a scramble happened.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I kind of remember that. Yeah. And another thing is another Australian guy from that region is just surging right now.
It certainly is.
Except for Arlene Blenkow.
That's tough.
Before that, we had James Krause and Claudio Silva. James Krause picked up a unanimous decision. This was one of the lull, probably in my opinion, James Krause played it safe. Like, he fought how exactly he should fight. And Claudio Silva, I felt like Claudio Silva gave James Krause the fight that he needed. He was loading up on everything, just kind of really giving those tells what he was going to throw. And Krause he's always had a guy who's been really good vision, good technically sound, was just slipping, ripping. I don't really have much to say about good performance by James Krause. Claudio Silva, I think he ended 14 fight winning streak. So that's not good. This is a guy people are starting to get a little excited about, but not tonight. He looked terrible in my opinion.
He looked terrible. He had that 4-year layoff and then come back and won a couple over decent fighters. Nordine Taleb, Danny Roberts in there, not bad fighters. The word I was thinking by the end of the third round was outclassed. Krause just outclassed him. I'm sure Silva was a stronger guy. I'm sure he had more power behind those shots. I'm sure if they ended up on the ground, he was probably the better pure grappler. But he just couldn't make anything happen that he wanted to. He got outclassed.
Yeah, I don't know if it was Dan Hardy or Daniel Cormier was saying something that really made a lot of sense. He kept saying, he's throwing all looping things. Start throwing some down the middle, and you'll actually start landing because the guy's looking for looping things. And when you start, what happens a lot of times when you start looking for, the looping things is what you can slip. You start, all of a sudden you start looking for that, and you're waiting for it to come on, round this angle. Next minute it comes straight down. That's how you get hurt. Wasn't there, but I said that a lot of people got excited about Claudio Silva, but let's call it what it is. We're excited because he's got a split decision win over Leon Edwards 6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
There's not top 5 welterweight Leon Edwards, and that's why people are excited to say because he has one really good win on his record.
And he had that huge streak on his own, and
there's not other than Leon Edwards, there's nobody whoa, Before that, talk about a guy in a streak, but the wrong way. Thomas Almeida returned to the cage after another extremely long layoff. Take on Jonathan Martinez, and Martinez, as you just said, outclassed. I'm going to say that for this one. He just outclassed him, picked him apart. Almeida had 2 really big issues. He wasn't landing hard, and he didn't have the output. If the other guy has a higher output and hitting harder, that is really bad. That's a bad night for you.
I was more wrong about this fight than any other fight on the card.
Okay.
I need to readjust my thinking. I believed in Thomas Almeida way too long, and I have been too slow to believe in Martinez.
Well, but this guy lost to Andrei Sukhmatov.
Yep, he did. He lost Andrei Sukhmatov. Now that was short notice, So he
lost to Andrei Sukhmatov.
he sure did.
I don't mean listen. This guy's from my state. He's from Rhode Island. I think he's the only Rhode Islander ever in the UFC. Oh, Eric Spicely too. But we're not getting world class. We're not talking about world beaters and Eric Spicely and Andrei Sukhmatov. But yeah, you lost to Andrei Sukhmatov, so there's nothing to get too excited about. Yeah. But he is showing improvements, and especially his poise. I can tell you want to keep talking about it again.
Well, he's 26. And when he debuted in the UFC, he had not yet hooked up with a good team. So, from age 24 to 26, finally starting to train with a top level team, he's making strides. I've been too slow to pick up on it because if you asked me, if not before this fight, definitely before the science fight, what is Jonathan Martinez good at? I would have been like, I don't know. Make Jonathan Martinez in a UFC video game and he's a 5 and everything.
Yeah.
There's nothing terrible. Yeah. That's not the case anymore. And Almeida, he'd been gone for almost 3 years. He'd lost his last 2 fights before that, but to me, Almeida was, in my mind, still a top 10 guy. He'd lost to Garbrandt, Jimmy Rivera, Rob Font, all
if not top
10
15,
guys at the time.
top 20 guy. Yeah, exactly. I mean, he lost to 3 good guys. Now you can't say that anymore.
I can't say that anymore, and just
one thing that stood out to me from a technical sense is the same thing I was talking about Ortega in round 1. I didn't expect to speak on it twice tonight, but Jonathan Martinez was parrying, and he was not so much parrying, but he was hand fighting and just shutting down Almeida's left hand, but still landing his own offense off of it. Just a really good showing from Martinez. Terrible showing from Almeida. That's the main card. So we've covered the main card. Let's move on to the prelims. Probably the funnest fight of the night. We don't have the awards yet because we're taking it right afterwards, but I'm thinking this might be fight of the night. And that was...
Well, I have the awards if you want to take a pause real quick.
Go ahead.
Jessica Andrade's performance of the night for her first round stoppage of Caitlin Chukagian. No surprise there. The other performance of the night, Jimmy Crute, for making short work of Modestas Bukauskas. Fight of the night, Guram Kutateladze and Mateusz Gamrot.
All right, you got it.
So
Matt.
you were right.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Crute and Andrade got performance of the night?
Yep.
Brian Ortega didn't?
Apparently not.
What? What? Oh my!
Well,
it's so crazy because they usually go to the main event too, which is great.
Well, performance of the night a lot of times will go to finishes though.
Oh, but I know, but like throw another one out. Like this, I don't know. Whatever.
He's getting those Modelo dollars. He'll be all right.
True. That's true.
He just gave away his hair.
Oh yeah, we didn't even mention that. Like good. He gave away his hair for was that Locks of Love for people with cancer. So.
Really somebody's very, very lucky because that man had beautiful hair.
Yeah. Well, hold on a second. We might not say that considering that person has cancer, so they don't know if they're lucky.
Well,
I know you, man.
They're blessed in a indirect and smaller way. I'm sure they'd rather have their own hair, but if I could have anybody's hair, it might be it might be Brian Ortega's.
I knew you meant that. I figured I'd have to. You're late now. You're like. Right now, you're like, what a dickhead to call me out on that.
When I saw the pictures at the weigh-ins, I was like, oh man, was the weight cut that hard that he cut off?
Because that's literally what people were saying.
The hair.
That was literally what people were saying.
Yeah.
We hope it wasn't one of these ones where like, all right, guys, we got to shave your head to make weight. And they're like, let's twist this and give it to Lux Love. I'm just going to assume he's a good dude. You talk about all the stuff he does, charity and his home. I'm assuming that was the plan from day one. And to do it for the weigh-ins to get even more attention to a great cause. Actually, my own daughter, who's only 9 years old, did the same thing. She didn't shave her head, but she grew her hair really long, and she wanted to do that. So shout out to my daughter, Amber Shillan.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Anyway, long way around to saying that Gamrot and Kutateladze.
Yeah, Gamrot and Garan. I wrote his name down. Kutateladze. Kutateladze. This was such a fun fight. Both had their moments. This was the closest fight. This is the one that a lot of people were on Twitter and different places were split. I went 29-28 for Kutateladze. I was okay with Gamrot getting the decision. I thought the first round was close. I thought Kutateladze was landing the harder shots. Mm-hmm. If this was a 5-round fight, Gamrot's winning that. But it wasn't a 5-round fight. I mean, he was starting to really take over, but it was a little too late. How did you score it?
I scored it rounds 1 and 2 for Kutateladze, the last round for Gamrot. But if I watched it again, maybe I gave Kutateladze the first round just because I was surprised to seeing him do as well as he was. Maybe if I rewatch it by the cold light of day, I feel different about it. But that was a close one, so I'm not mad either way on that one. If people, gave the fight to Gamrot, I was pretty wrong about this one. I expected him to have a much easier time.
Me too.
I expected Gamrot to win, and I expected him not to have that hard a time. But
so I didn't really know that much, and I really pride myself about knowing incoming fighters making their debuts. I didn't really know much about Kutateladze. As soon as he came out and he looked just like oh my god, the hottest fighter in the world right now. What's his name? His teammate. What's his name? The guy no one wants to fight. Everyone's going crazy about it, the Russian guy.
He was there.
Yeah, what's his name?
Too. He was sitting.
Oh my
right next
god,
to
we're getting killed. We're a bunch of casuals. What's his name?
Khamzat Chimaev.
Yeah, Khamzat Chimaev. Oh my gosh. When he came out looking just like Chimaev, and then like they said he trains with him, I was like, oh shit, I got this one wrong. like I like Gamrot. I think he's a much better striker than he showed tonight, but he's a very good grappler. He's a decorated European jiu-jitsu guy. But sometimes we score, and I really want to rewatch this because sometimes we score guys, and we shouldn't do this. We score like stopping takedowns as like winning rounds, but that's just defense. Like if I throw a punch and you block a punch, we don't give you like offensive credit for it. But we do that a lot with takedowns. Like I heard people say, "Well, you stuffed 5 takedowns." Okay, like it's not offense.
Yeah, like if you stuffed the takedown and went back to kicking the guy's ass, that's how you won the round.
That's right. Yeah, you sprawl and brawl. You need that brawl part. Yeah, I don't know if that was the case. But really, really good showing. Really fun fight. I don't know what else. What else do you want to say about this fight? Like, I think it's just going to come down to how you scored it.
It'll come down to how you scored it. I don't think, like, obviously, Guram Kutataladze, his stock is way up after this one. I don't think Gamrot takes too much of a step back.
No.
The guy was undefeated, and he was undefeated in KSW. Not everybody he was fighting were complete world beaters, but there's a library of video on the guy. You can watch his last 10 fights. He's the real deal. I think good. He has staying power in the UFC as well. I don't think he's going anywhere. Kind of the same conversation we were having about Bukauskas and Krut.
Yeah.
I think Mateusz Gamrot is still definitely a UFC level guy, and who knows? It
was a split decision, and Kutateladze actually was saying afterwards that he thought Gamrot won. He kept saying it was your fight. I could take it down so many times. So it's not often where a guy gets taken down as much as he gets the win. So as a lot of people were bashing the judges for another fight we'll get to later, this one, you can't say, well, they gave too much to take down, because in this case they did not. And I agree. Gamrot was a 2 weight class champion in KSW. It's still a good organization. His first career loss. I agree. I don't think his stock fell at all, if any. Like he looked. I still thought he looked good. Before that, we had Jillian Roberts taking on Poliana Botello. Jillian Roberts cruised to a unanimous decision. Here's the stat that I shouldn't say stat, but the record that really surprised me. Jillian Roberts is 6-2 in the UFC. Like where have I been? Like I knew she had a good record, but I was gonna guess like 4-3. Like she's 6-2. Does that surprise you as it does as much as it surprises me?
It is. Yeah, I mean, I would not have guessed that if you just asked me off the top of my head what her UFC record was. I would have said like 4-2, 4-3, because I can picture her 2 losses.
Yeah,
but like I'm looking at her record now, and some of these have not been against, world beaters, but
no,
she has some decent wins, and Botello is not a bad fighter.
No,
good performance, and she made it look easy.
She made a big adjustment. Like she was getting stuffed a little bit on her takedowns, kind of getting hit, and then she just kind of started chaining takedowns together. That's impressive. The other thing that stands out, she's only 25 years old, which is like just seems like she should be older because of how many matches she has. The thing about her, as she is 6-2 in the UFC, until she shows a striking game, I'm not going to get excited about her because she's going to run into the girl she can't take down. I mean, we saw it with Macy Barber. Macy Barber smashed her in like a minute or whatever it was, like destroyed her. There's going to be girls that she's not going to be able. I mean, like imagine, she's a 125 pounder. Imagine if she tried that against Jessica Andrade.
Right.
Like. There's no way. She has no avenue of ever beating Jessica Andrade. Like Jessica Andrade would brutal. You shoot on a takedown, or Jessica Andrade is going to brutalize you with hammer fist and put you. She could knock you out with hammer fist. So I kind of want Jillian Roberts to be good. So I kind of really hope she starts focusing. It might be just a confidence thing. Like you're really good at grappling. I'm sure she works on her striking all the time, and she's only 25, so there is area to go. Before that, we had Jung Young Park and John Phillips in one of the biggest beatdowns in the history of the sport. The total strikes was 286-5. The Iron Turtle, my scorecard was 30-26. I gave 3 10-8 rounds. How many 10-8 rounds did you score?
Wait, so 30-24, 3 10-8 rounds.
Oh, what'd I say? 30.
You said 30-26.
Well, I went to public school, so I can't add. Yeah, 30-24. Okay. I'm sorry.
I would be the same. 10-8 round each of the 3 times. Just you could tell, part of the way through that it probably wasn't going to be a stoppage, but Park went every minute of every round. Phillips landed almost no offense. It was just a complete mauling.
Yeah. John Phillips might be the worst wrestler in recent memory. He's terrible. Caposa is a really good follow on Twitter. He's as hardcore of a person. I mean, he's just a fan as far as I know, and he gets so much love from media members and fighters. He had one of my favorite tweets ever. He said, oh, look what John Young Park is doing to John Phillips. He should be ranked in the top 10, right? As in a Shimaev kind of joke. But so Shimaev was the last guy to face John Phillips and absolutely destroyed him. Same with Jung Young Park. Jung Young Park actually landed more strike than Shimaev did. This is the most amazing stat ever. In his last 2 fights, John Phillips had been outstruck. I literally looked on UFC.com to get this right. 410-7. What?
Wow.
What? How is that? 410-7. Honestly, once he got taken down in the 3rd round, you knew he wasn't going to get up. Why let him get hit? Just throw the towel on. All right, you got taken down. You didn't land that one haymaker. I think the white Mike Tyson actually, I never thought, I thought it was a stupid nickname. I actually think it's actually an accurate nickname because I'm assuming Mike Tyson is about that good of a wrestler too. Okay, it kind of makes sense. Yeah, I mean, if his nickname was the European Jordan Barrows, then I'd be okay, that's a pretty stupid nickname. But this one might be pretty accurate. Before that, we had Jamie Malarkey versus Faraz Zayam in a really, really fun fight. Pretty evenly matched. I thought both guys had some really good moments. But this was the fight that most people thought was a bad decision, as Zayam won I think it was unanimous decision over Jamie Malarkey. Mm-hmm. Yep. How did you score it?
I scored it 29-28 for Zayam. I agree. I gave him the first 2 rounds.
Okay, I didn't. I gave him the first round. I gave Malarkey the second 2 rounds. I think it just comes down to, is to the simplest way possible of saying this, kind of laziest. Do you think his striking was better than Malarkey's wrestling? What did you?
Yep.
You went with his striking. I went with Malarkey's wrestling more. I thought his top control. I want to shout out Jason. If you agree with me, agree with my thinking that the wrestling was more effective than the striking, I want to give credit to a tweet that I retweeted. It was Jason Hogman. He's a journalist for The Scrap. He said that the judges really looked at the last 10 seconds of a round more than the rest of the round, because I thought Malarkey's control for the round. But, I should say thing. I gave him Malarkey, but I didn't think it was a screw job. It was close. Going to the judges, I wasn't Malarkey has this one.
Yeah.
That said, kind of same thing. Malarkey lost again in the UFC, but I'm interested in seeing him again. What I talked about is both guys had their moments. Zayam obviously was his long range striking, his leg kicks, his sweep in the first round. He actually got taken down and swept. And even though he got taken down, he made a lot of the he made Malarkey really work together. He made him chain takedowns together. Malarkey, what impressed me was his constant pressure, especially after having a bad first round, and then chaining wrestling together. A lot of times he got on a leg, would grab the other ankle, control. Just really fun. Do you have any other thoughts on this fight?
Really, no. I was impressed with Malarkey in defeat. If, again, I did think he lost. And it was a bit of a mirror image of the Riddell fight, because the Riddell fight was a wild fight, fun fight, but Riddell was pulling ahead at the end. Sure. He really walloped him in that last round. So when Zayam won the first round pretty uncontroversially, I was like, oh man, Malarkey might be in trouble. But instead, he was the guy coming on strong at the end. Always a good look, especially for a guy who ended up dropping his second straight. that can be the difference in your job sometimes.
Yeah, just fun. Before that, Maxim Grishin picked up his first win in the UFC as he defeated Gazimurad Antigulov by second round TKO. So I didn't like the stoppage. I thought the stoppage was bad, but I also feel that it was like inevitable, like that. Like Grishin was going to win this fight. So what I'm talking about is in the second round, Grishin basically unloaded on a huge 25 punch combination, and Grishin, in my opinion, Antigulov, in my opinion, was blocking most of the punches. He was kind of doing a high guard, hiding behind it. Some of the punches obviously was like knocking his head back as the hands were trying to push him back into his head. What did you think about the stoppage?
I was fine with it. I can understand why people would complain about it. A lot of the stuff wasn't getting through, but what was Antigulov doing?
Yeah. No, I know.
What would have changed if they let him get punched 10 more times?
Yeah. No, I was saying like I don't think it's the worst stoppage ever. I thought it was a bad stoppage. I thought he was blocking most of them. But I also think Grisham put the referee in a position where, like, hey, he's blocking all these, but he's also not doing anything. Like, can't let me do 20 seconds of offense without even a punch, like, throw a punch back, like eat one to throw one back just to kind of stay in it. Mm-hmm. And he didn't do that. So, while I didn't like the stoppage, I understand it.
Yeah.
Anything else to take about this fight? Like,
I'm glad Grisham looked good. I was pretty high on him from the PFL. I don't think he's a future top 10 guy at 205.
That's it. You said he's going to win the title. That's it. He said it. He said he's going to be the one to beat John Jones, actually. Is that what you just said?
Yeah, pretty much. And after his miserable UFC debut at heavyweight against Marcin Tybura, I was like, please let this guy get a real chance at 205. Not only did he get a real chance at 205, he got a nice warm-up fight against the guy who was on our cut list last time he lost.
Yeah.
So if they're going to keep him around for anything, let it be for Maxim Grishin to have something to do.
Build someone else up. And the first fight of the night, we had Said Nurmagomedov taking on Mark Striegel. Striegel making his UFC debut. Not what he pictured, as he ran straight into, he tried crashing the pocket, and Said Nurmagomedov just cleaned his clock with a left hook, finished off with brutal ground and pound that some of them went on a little too long. There's nothing else to say. I mean, this was beautiful knockout.
Yep, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, nothing you can really take from it.
It was a 50-second fight. I don't want to talk about it too much longer than that. So, yeah, welcome to the UFC, Said Nurmagomedov.
No, Said's been in a while.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Welcome to the UFC, Mark Striegel.
Yeah. Let's do the cut list. I think we we've already talked about Antigulov. We thought last fight he should not be in the UFC, so we both agree he shouldn't be in anymore. 4
straight, and he's looked completely miserable every time.
Yeah. So we don't talk about what we're going to talk about on the show. Like, we like to do it off the cuff. So the only thing we say is, like, I usually message you like, hey, this is time I'm going to do it, and let's matchmake like these 3-4 fighters. So and I don't say like let's matchmake them against this, but I just say like have someone in mind. That's it. Mm-hmm. I know who you're going to add to the cut list because you did prep me. I spoiled it. So go ahead, and I will 100 before you say the person, I will 100% agree with you. So who is else on our cut list?
John Phillips is 1-5 in the UFC. His one win is a 17-second blitzing of Alan Amadovsky, who has 0 wins in the UFC and might actually have been released, and I just don't know it yet. While some of his losses are excusable, Chimaev is the shiny new thing. Kevin Holland is very dangerous. He's lost to Jack Marshman. Marshman might be out of the UFC. He's lost to Charles Byrd. Charles Byrd is out of the UFC and I believe retired. He's given us nothing to indicate that he's UFC material, and he's had 6 tries now. He needs to go.
Yeah, he. All I have to say is 410-7 in total strikes his last 2 fights. If Alan Amadowski, who got knocked out by John Phillips, is still in the UFC, like after what John Phillips has done the last 2, he should get cut too for it. Like
it's on general principles.
Hey, like we have you, like we have you booked against this guy in like second week of November. No, actually, we're cutting you. The only thing I would do with John Phillips is if you have like a prospected middleweight that has like lost, like had that early loss, and you kind of want him to win, like just every once in a while, like every like once a year, you bring back John Phillips so that some guy can just smash him and look good again. Like just keep doing that like once a year. All right, this is the yearly like beat up John Phillips. Let's go to the Bulls and the Bears. This is a stock market reference. When we say Bulls, this is people whose stock is rising. And we say Bears, this is when their stock is going down. I'll go first this time. We'll go with the negative, which is the Bears. So these we can pick up to 3 people, kind of like hockey's 3 stars of the night, but this would be the bad one, being number 1 being the worst. So number 3, I'm going to go with Claudio Silva. He's 38 years old, and he looked 38 years old tonight. Snapped a 14-fight win streak, a guy that some people started getting excited about. I don't know if anybody is after tonight. My number 2 Bear, Thomas Almeida, lost 4 out of his last 5, 3 in a row. At one time, this guy was a 2-1 favorite over Cody Garbrandt. And now he's losing to a guy who got smashed by Andre Sekpatat. And my number 1 Bear, Brian Ortega 2.0 is here. One thing they talked about Brian Ortega 2.0 is picking a new team. So he's keeping Renan Gracie, his jiu-jitsu coach. But his old team is the Bear because they don't get to experience this new and improved Brian Ortega. So my Bear is Brian Ortega's old team. Who are your Bears?
I have just 2. One is Thomas Almeida. You know, he just has not shown anything like he looked like a couple years ago. And I need to stop believing that he's a future title challenger in that weight class. Number 1, Chan Sung Jung. Chan Sung Jung is a guy that the UFC desperately wants to be great. They desperately want him to be great. He is a guy that if he gives them any excuse to do so, they will get him into a title shot. But he has a hard road back to that at this point with the people he has lost to and how and when. It's tough because I feel as though we will look back and this will be the point where we realize that he just settled back and kind of regressed to the norm and became a top 10 fighter who gives us great action fights. But this was the end of him as a featherweight title contender in the UFC.
Yeah, I think you're right.
We're talking about a guy that had custom T-shirts printed up, and Dana was wearing them. Before he was even really in the top 10. Yeah.
No, I think you're onto something. So let's go to the Bulls. These are the people who had the night where their stock rose. I'll let you go first this time. How many do you have? And you can start from the bottom, work your way up to the grand winner of the night.
I have 3. Number 3, I said it either 1 or 2 weeks ago, but I'll say it again. Brave CF again slides us another guy who just immediately looks sensational.
That's right.
The benefits of being right next door to the United Arab Emirates have never been so rich because, you know, they're based in Bahrain, and they've been sliding fighters onto these UFC cards all spring, summer, and fall. And for the most part, they've shown out really well, which is, I mean, obviously great for the fighters. But like I say, once this world gets back to normal, it's going to be great for that promotion. They're going to become a promotion that we talk about kind of like we talk about KSW, LFA, Cage Warriors, kind of the top tier of promotions where even I watch a lot of worldwide MMA and I work on the Sherdog Fight Finder. I would have been hard pressed to tell you anything about Brave CF a year ago.
Yeah. Let me ask you this question before you get to your number 2. Before Fight Island, I'm going to put you on the spot. Did you know that Bahrain was next to United Arab Emirates?
Okay, yeah, I could have pointed it out on a map. Right. I'm good there.
There he is.
You know,
He's
I'm
great
like
at geography.
I'm the Dave Kaplan of MMA media. I can tell you where all the countries are and what their capitals are, even if I'm not good at the rest of my job.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm Diamond Dave Kaplan.
You are much smarter than me. All right, who's your number 2?
Number 2, Jessica Andrade. She walked in, answered all the questions. Yeah. Does her power carry over? Yes. You mentioned earlier that a lot of women this year have moved from 115 to 125.
Yeah.
They've moved from 115 to 125, in my opinion, because they see how quick the route to a title shot is there compared to 115.
Yeah,
just
sure.
The house is getting empty. Like Valentina, like we're already struggling to figure out who's next. So top women at 115 know they can be next if they just win one or two fights. Obviously, especially if they were a former champ like Andrade. She answered all the questions.
Yep.
I mean, just the fact that after this fight, you and I already said, yeah, we're fine if she fights Val next. There, I mean, you can't do much more for your stock than that, unless your name is Brian Ortega, and he is my number one bull. It's the obvious call, but it's the right call. He came back almost 2 years after the first loss of his career, a resounding loss, got beaten up pretty good, and came back and put on the best performance of his career. New wrinkles to his game, physically seemed great, no signs of fatigue, no signs that he's slowed down, no signs that he's lost power. It's seriously just one of the best performances of the year. And he is my number one bull.
Yeah, we're going to have a lot of similarities. So you only picked 2 bears, and I'm glad you did, and I'll tell you why. Because I am going to cheat. I've never done this on the show, but I am picking 4 bulls. But you'll know why when we get to number 1. Number 4, Jim Crute. He's 24 years old. Unbelievable performance. He looks like a future contender from Australia. So number 4, Jim Crute. Number 3, Jessica Andrade. 100% agree with everything you said. Some things, she did come to a new division. She didn't have an easy route either. Like, she fought a former title challenger who's ranked very high in the division. The other thing is, you talk about the title route. You're talking about a girl who has a loss to the champion, you got a knockout, and then the number 1 contender just recently beat her. So she was way behind. So, and she put herself right back in the mix. My number 2, Brian Ortega. There's nothing else to say about him. Like, I'm going crazy about him. He would be the no-brainer top star of the night, except for this guy. I can't believe you didn't think of this guy. You had to listen very carefully to the broadcast team to pick out the number 1 bull. The number 1 bull is Hannibal of Carth. This guy has been dead for 2,204 years, but he got a shout out on the UFC broadcast. I wonder how many people looked him up on Wikipedia. I had to look him up. So Hannibal of Carthage, or am I even saying it right? Yep. That guy, right, Carthage. Hannibal of Carthage is my bull. Good for Hannibal. Guy's been dead for 2,204 years, but he's back in the news. Good for you, Hannibal. Let's go with your grade. What is your grade for the evening?
Oh, my grade for the evening is a B+. I mean, the last 2 fights were just eye openers. They were sensational. Had some exciting stuff down the card, but we also had several fighters who just aren't UFC material, and some of the decisions weren't all that exciting to watch. B+.
All right. You went with a B+. That's because you were a big fan of the Roman army and you didn't like the love for Carthage. So I'm actually going to go with A-. I think I was sensational. So I'll go with an A-. So there you guys have it. Yep. God, you're making this face like you want to say something.
Well, yeah, this is like 3 weeks in a row that you've given the card a higher grade than I have. And that was after like 10 in a row that like I was the nice guy. I don't know what happened here.
I'm like, I don't know. It's a fall weather. I don't know what it is, but
there is no fall weather here, so maybe that's what it is.
Oh yeah, that's it. Yeah, you have. Yeah, I got to see the changing of the leaves. It's making me feel warm, and I don't know, spiced lattes, pumpkin spice latte. I don't drink that stuff, but maybe I don't know what it is. Guys, we'll be back next week. We'll be recapping UFC 2. What am I on? I don't even know. 254, which is I'm getting to the part where I don't even know the pay per view is. It is Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Justin Gaethje. Fantastic. We also got former champion Robert Whittaker versus Jared Cannonier. But me and Ben will be back even sooner than that because, of course, it's pay-per-view, which means the UFC Sherdog Roundtable, where it'll be me, Ben, and a special guest. We don't want to give it away yet, but it's a big name in the sport. Hopefully he comes through. If not, we'll have to put someone on the spot on very short notice. Ben, say something witty before we leave.
My last bull is referee Lucas Bosaski, who just kept stopping fights for weird things at weird moments, and I have no idea what the hell his deal is, but man, get rid of that guy.
There you go. Have it. See you guys next time.